Listen closely, because this story doesn't begin in a boardroom or a mansion or in some glittering European capital. It starts in a quiet corner of rural Ireland, a place so poor, so isolated, so forgotten, that most people born there never truly left. And yet, from that soil came a man who would rise higher than anyone thought possible. Seán Quinn, a name that would one day echo through every bank, every factory, every political hallway in Ireland. But back then, in the late 1940s, he was just a boy on a modest family farm in Derrylin, a border village where opportunity didn't knock, because honestly, it didn't even know the place existed. Picture it: mist-covered fields, worn boots, the sound of cattle, and a young boy looking around and quietly wondering, is this it? Is this all life is supposed to be? That question, that tiny spark of dissatisfaction, would shape everything that came next. By the early 1970s, Ireland wasn't exactly booming. Jobs were scarce, money was tighter, and dreams were, well, they were something you kept to yourself. But not for Seán. No, he wasn't waiting for someone else to hand him a future. In 1973, with no investors, no safety net, and no one betting on him, Quinn borrowed £100. Just 100. Not to buy land, not to start a flashy business, but to dig gravel. Gravel from his own family's field. It sounds almost laughably small, doesn't it? But that's the twist. Sometimes the biggest empires start with the smallest, roughest, most unlikely pieces. He sold that gravel locally, working long days and longer nights, slowly carving out a reputation for being the guy who never said no to a job and never waited for someone else to solve a problem he could just handle himself. Those early hardships, the mud, the exhaustion, the uncertainty, built something inside him, a belief, a rule, a hardwired instinct. Never depend on anyone. And that instinct became his greatest weapon. Because here's where the story gets interesting, and fast. As the Ordos grew, Seán didn't pocket the profits. He didn't buy cars, suits, watches. He reinvested everything, every pound, every penny, right back into the business. New equipment, new trucks, new opportunities. Before long, gravel turned into cement. Cement expanded into concrete products, concrete into glass manufacturing, glass into plastics, plastics into packaging, and then, like a domino chain exploding in slow motion, he added insurance, hotels, building materials, even radiators. Piece by piece, the Quinn Group was born, not from money, but from momentum. And because everything he built was local, every factory, every warehouse, every job, the community didn't just support him, they revered him. In one of the poorest parts of Ireland, Quinn didn't just create wealth, he created hope. Ask anyone from that region and they'll tell you, Seán wasn't a boss, he was our Seán. The man who kept thousands of families afloat, who fought hard, who stayed humble, who didn't act like a billionaire, even when, eventually, he became one. And yes, he did become one. By 2008, Seán Quinn was worth an estimated €4.7 billion, Ireland's richest man. A billionaire built from gravel, grit, and sheer willpower. But here's the part most people never see coming, and maybe he didn't see it either. The same instinct that made him unstoppable, the same belief that he could outwork, outthink, and outrun anyone, was about to lead him straight into a trap. A trap so massive, so fast, and so destructive, it would take everything from him. Yes, everything. And it all begins with one gamble, one decision, one bank. But that comes next. Picture Ireland during the Celtic Tiger years. Homes skyrocketing in value, banks practically handing out loans. Everyone convinced the boom was unstoppable, like the entire country was rising together. And right in the middle of it all was Seán Quinn. To him, Anglo Irish Bank wasn't just another bank. It felt like the heartbeat of Ireland's future. A once-in-a-generation opportunity he believed he had to be part of. But instead of buying shares the normal, safe way, Seán chose something far more dangerous. He turned to contracts for difference, CFDs. They look simple. You bet on a stock going up. But leverage means one small movement can make you a fortune or wipe you out faster than you can react. And Seán didn't ease into it. Quietly, behind closed doors, he increased his position again and again and again until one man held 25% of the entire bank. Then, the global financial crisis hit. The property boom collapsed. Banks froze. Confidence evaporated. And Anglo Irish Bank's stock price fell like a stone. Seán Quinn watched his screen as years of wealth disappeared in a matter of months. One of the biggest personal financial losses Europe had ever seen. But here's the thing. Losing the money wasn't the real disaster. Because after the crash, that's when the nightmare truly began. The money was gone. But the storm? It was just beginning. After the collapse of Anglo Irish Bank, the Irish government stepped in. And suddenly, Seán Quinn wasn't just a businessman who had made a mistake. He became a target, a symbol, a man the state claimed owed billions in loans tied to his investments. One by one, the authorities moved to take control of the Quinn Group, his factories, his hotels, his legacy. For the communities in the north, it was a nightmare. People who had relied on his businesses for decades, families, friends, neighbors, suddenly faced layoffs, uncertainty, fear. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about survival. And then came the headlines. Ireland's richest man faces national seizure of his empire. Quinn family accused of shielding assets. Belfast billionaire declared bankrupt. The legal battles were brutal. Every court hearing felt like a public execution. Allegations flew. Rumors of intimidation spread. The story became a national drama watched by millions. And in Quinn's hometown, resentment brewed, but so did sympathy. Many still saw him as the boy from Derelin who built everything with his own hands. A folk hero, crushed by a system bigger than himself. In 2011, the unthinkable happened. Seán Quinn was declared bankrupt in Belfast. From billionaire to nothing. A symbolic fall that stunned the nation. And if that wasn't enough, the courts weren't finished. In 2012, Quinn was sentenced to 9 weeks in prison for contempt of court, accused of hiding assets from the bank. Imagine that. The richest man in Ireland, a titan who built an empire from a pile of gravel, sitting behind bars. 9 weeks that would humiliate, haunt, and reshape his life. Meanwhile, the human cost spread far beyond him. Thousands of employees lost jobs. Communities that had thrived under his businesses faced economic collapse. Local suppliers, farmers, service workers, all caught in the ripple effect of one man's financial gamble. Families who once celebrated Seán Quinn now feared the future he had helped create. But even amid the chaos, there were small moments that told another story. Workers remembered his fairness, his quiet generosity, his hands-on approach. Neighbors recalled how he fought to keep businesses local. The man who had once been untouchable, whose name was whispered with awe, was now living proof of how fragile fortune and reputation can be. And yet, even as the courts ruled, the bank seized, and the headlines piled up, there was one question that lingered. one haunting thought whispered across the Irish countryside. What remains of a man who once built an empire from a pile of gravel? Because the empire was gone, the money was gone, even the freedom to live without scrutiny was gone. But Seán Quinn himself? That, the world was about to find out. Years have passed since the empire crumbled, since the headlines screamed and the factories went quiet, since Seán Quinn sat in a prison cell, stripped of his wealth, stripped of his power, stripped of the life he had built from nothing. Today he walks a quieter path. No skyscrapers, no private jets, no billions. Instead, a life measured not in money, but in memories, in lessons learned the hard way, in a story that refuses to die. And yet, the man himself is still impossible to ignore. Because in Ireland, Seán Quinn isn't just history. He's a debate, a mirror. Some call him a villain, a reckless gambler whose obsession with control and risk helped destabilize a nation. To them, he embodies the dangers of certainty, of believing that even the largest system can be tamed by sheer will alone. But others see a hero, a man who built thousands of jobs in one of Ireland's poorest regions. A man who took risks, yes, but risks born from vision, hard work, and a desire to see his community thrive. To them, the banks, the government, the faceless institutions were the real culprits. Quinn was simply human, a man crushed under the weight of a system bigger than himself. The story refuses to sit quietly in textbooks or newspapers. In 2022, the documentary Quinn Country aired on RTE, reigniting the debate. Crowds rallied. Emotions flared. People who had lost family members to layoffs, and people whose lives had been lifted by his factories. All revisiting the question, was he a hero or a villain? And perhaps that's the enduring lesson. Not in the billions lost, not in the empire destroyed, but in the power of a single belief pushed too far. Belief that he could control outcomes. Belief that risk could be tamed. Belief that vision alone could protect an empire from forces far larger than himself. There's something deeply human in that. We all believe at some point that we're untouchable, that our instincts are flawless, that our path is unbreakable. And Quinn's story reminds us that certainty, no matter how confident, can be the most dangerous gamble of all. It's a story about wealth, but also about hubris, about ego, but also about dedication, about power, and the fragility of human ambition. Somewhere in rural Ireland, people still tell the tale of a boy who started with gravel, of a man who became the richest in the country, and of a man who lost everything, not because he was greedy, but because he believed too much that he could never fail. And that's the haunting question that lingers long after the headlines fade. Question: when an empire is built on certainty, what happens when certainty shatters? For Seán Quinn, the answer is written in every silent factory, every abandoned office, every memory of a community he lifted and a fortune he lost. And for Ireland, it's a story that will continue to spark debate, fascination, and cautionary reflection for generations to come. Because in the end, what destroyed Seán Quinn wasn't greed, it was certainty. Everyone thinks they know the story of Seán Quinn, the rise, the fall, the headlines screaming bankruptcy, billions lost, and a man behind bars. But what if I told you that's only part of it? There were layers beneath the surface, whispers in boardrooms, warnings in emails no one paid attention to, analysts raising red flags about Quinn's growing stake in Anglo Irish Bank, red flags that were quietly dismissed, and the CFDs, the same financial instruments that would destroy him, weren't invented by some rogue gambler alone. Some of the very bankers who sold him those contracts now claim they had no role. But at the time, they encouraged it, pushed the leverage, whispered assurances no one outside the room could hear. It wasn't just finance. There were political currents too. Tensions in Dublin, tension in Belfast. Questions linger. Was Seán Quinn targeted because he had grown too powerful, too independent? A man who controlled entire industries and thousands of jobs? Then there were darker stories. Intimidation incidents at Quinn Industrial Holdings, whispered threats, rumors of pressure from unseen forces. Nothing officially proven, but enough to make communities divide. Some saw him as a victim, others saw him as reckless, and the mystery, it never really went away. Meanwhile, the media did its part. Stories carefully framed, headlines chosen to shock, segments aired to shape public opinion. Some journalists claimed it was a reckoning for greed. Others questioned who really benefited when Quinn was pushed out. Was it the government? The banks? Competitors lurking in the shadows? The questions stacked like dominoes, falling in ways no one could fully explain. Through it all, Seán Quinn was human, a man under siege, a man whose every move was scrutinized, dissected, questioned. And yet, quietly, he kept moving, fighting where he could, enduring what he couldn't. And it leaves us with a haunting thought. How much downfall is enough for one man? He lost billions. He lost freedom. He lost his empire. And still, some people felt it wasn't fair. Some people wondered if the system itself had been waiting for him to stumble. Because here's the truth most don't see. History remembers the headlines. It rarely remembers the shadows. The negotiations behind closed doors. The pressures unseen. The human cost hidden from the public eye. Seán Quinn's story wasn't just a cautionary tale about money or ambition. It was about power, perception, and the fragility of reputation. It was about forces bigger than one man, forces that shape outcomes no one can control. And even after all the lawsuits, the bankruptcy, the prison sentence, even after billions vanished and factories shut down, even then, the story didn't end. Because when you peel back the layers, there's still mystery, still unanswered questions, still lessons hidden in the shadows. And that's why, even after everything, Seán Quinn's story wasn't finished. When we step back and look at the story of Seán Quinn, it's almost hard to believe. A boy from a small farm in Dublin, Ireland. A man who borrowed £100 to dig gravel, and then built an empire that employed thousands, spanned industries, and made him the richest man in Ireland. It's a story that feels almost mythical, but myths have a way of teaching harsh truths. Because all that wealth, all that power, came with a single fragile thread: human judgment. Seán Quinn didn't fall because he was careless in his work ethic. He didn't fall because he was greedy or lazy. He fell because he believed, truly believed, that his instincts were infallible, that he could control forces far larger than himself. That certainty, in a world of risk, was safe. And that's the lesson. Success can blind even the smartest, hardest working people. Confidence can feel like armor until the storm comes. And even the strongest armor has cracks. Growth without limits is an illusion. No matter how much gravel you dig, how many factories you build, or how many lives you touch, there is always a boundary, a tipping point, a moment where ambition meets reality, and reality usually wins. But it's not all tragedy. Seán Quinn's story also reminds us of what human determination can achieve. From nothing, he created something extraordinary. He gave his community hope. He inspired loyalty. He built jobs, infrastructure, pride, and even in his downfall, the lessons endure. He didn't fall because he was evil. He fell because he believed he couldn't fall. And that makes the story unforgettable. Because it's not just about Seán Quinn, it's about all of us. The moments when we think we are untouchable, the times when we gamble on certainty, the choices that define not just wealth, but character, legacy, and memory. So as we close this chapter, ask yourself, what would you do if you had everything at stake? How far would you push your belief before reality pulled the rug out from under you? And what remains of a person when everything else is gone? Seán Quinn's story is a mirror, a warning, a lesson, and a testament to the unpredictable power of human ambition. If these rise and fall human stories fascinate you, stories of vision, risk, and consequence, make sure you subscribe, because more true stories like this are coming. Because history is full of people who reached for the sky and sometimes fell. But every fall has a lesson, and every story has a voice. Seán Quinn's voice still echoes, not in money, not in headlines, but in the choices we make, the risks we take, and the certainty we cling to. And that, in the end, is what makes a story worth hearing.